For those of you who have been following my build on the B-17, you know we're at a point where the bulk of the aircraft is assembled. I still have some detail parts that have to go on, but they'll go on after we paint. So we're at the point now where we're going to put the glass sections in. We're going to mask them off with Eduard masks. The previous masking we did was kind of, rough because we were just shooting primer and I was just closing off the aircraft so primer didn't go in. This time we're going to put the masks on really carefully and glue the glass in place and then start painting. But before we get to that step, that'll be next, I wanted to talk a little bit about research and information about the model, how I get ready to build and paint an aircraft model or a ship or a car or whatever I'm going to do. I kind of like to enjoy the experience and learn a little bit as I go along, and I like to read a bit about my subject so that I get familiar with it. And I have different types of reading material and research material here that I gathered. And I've gathered this, over the last few years because I like the B-17. I think it's a great aircraft. It's one of my favorites. So I've got some reading material on it. And I started out by reading just a book about the airplane. This is a book called Flying Fortress, and it's by Edward Jablonski. And it's a book about the aircraft, the development of the aircraft, and the service of the aircraft, and the pilots that flew it. And it's really interesting to read about the subject, to get yourself familiar, and to get jazzed up about it, to get excited to build this. And this is a great book on the B-17. Highly recommended. The other types of materials that I gather are technical data. And when I say that, I mean books like these here. These are tech books. In other words, these are books about the airplane itself that have exploded view drawings of all the different parts of the airplane, the engines, the interior, and so forth. And the reason, I have like Warbird Tech, I have a detail and scale publication. I actually have the pilot's manual for the B-17. And this is my favorite. This is an aero detail book that takes you from the nose to the tail of this airplane with interior photos, exterior photos, everything you could want to look at about this airplane as you build. Why are these important? These are important because as you build, you may get to a point, and I did with this one a couple times, you get to a point where you're building something and you're not quite sure how it fits or how it goes in or how it's positioned. And these books are really useful in showing you the real one so that you can interpret what the model company is doing, how a gun mounts in here, why it's positioned like this, how this framing piece goes in. So that's where the technical books come in. I had questions about weathering on this aircraft as far as exhaust streaking and oil spillage and things like that. And these books come in handy to show you where the exhaust ports are. I had no clue that most of the exhaust comes out of the superchargers under the engines on this, and the exhaust for the engines are behind the cowling. And you do get a certain amount of exhaust stain, but not like what I see online. Be very careful when you look at pictures online of people's builds, because not everybody does the research, and you get a lot of models where the exhaust stains on the wings and things are just way overdone and in the wrong place. Do the research. Do it right. Make sure that you're doing it right for yourself, more so than anyone else. I also like to, when it comes to aircraft, I'm one of those guys that likes to go to the airport when vintage aircraft come into town and go and look at them. And what I do is usually, if like a B-17 comes into town, I take my camera, and it's easy now with digital cameras. Most of these pictures in here were 35 millimeter. But I go down and I take pictures of the exteriors of the aircraft, take pictures of the engines, the exhausts. I take pictures of the interiors. Everything that I can take a picture of, I take a picture of. That way, when I'm building, when you're looking at operational aircraft, you get a better feel for where weathering occurs, where oil stains are, where scuff marks are, where the chipping is when they're taking access panels off the engines and things like that. So build your own reference. If you see a B-17 coming into the Northeast Philly Airport, which is where I saw one of them, or down at the Mercer Airport, go down and take a look. They don't charge anything to walk around it and take pictures, and it's a lot of fun. And the last type of publication that I like to use, grab these guys here. And I usually look at these first just to get an idea of what the paint scheme is going to be. I try to get a hold of some publications that are in color, that show color paint schemes on these aircraft to get an idea of what I want to do. And if you look in here, there's a lot of good color photos and a lot of good profiles and so forth. So grab yourself some really good color reference material, some paint scheme material, books, look them over, pick out the one you want to build. So that's how I prep myself for building a model like this. I like to enjoy it. In other words, building the model is the best part. I like finishing and showing it to people and so forth, that's fine. But for myself, the enjoyment is doing it. And doing the reading and the research, that teaches you some history about the airplane. And being a history major in college, I love learning about these things from the past. I think that we really need to teach going forward about the guys that flew these and the missions they went on and the sacrifices they made. So enjoy the process. Don't just slap it together and throw it out over there and get the next one. Take the time to enjoy it. That's what modeling's about, and that's what history's about. So the next part of this will be painting. I'm really excited to get down to painting on this. We'll mask the windows, the clear parts, we'll put some paint on it, and then after that we'll probably go to weathering, and then decals, and finish it up. So stay tuned for the next part, and keep on modeling, and we'll see you then.